Good afternoon, Mr. Loh.
Afternoon.
Thank you very much for your submissions, which we have all read. What I propose to do, which you would have seen us do with the previous witnesses, is to go through your submissions and pause at several places to raise some points with you for clarification and elaboration.
Sure.
The issue of deliberate online falsehoods, I think there are several sub-issues that need to be considered. The first is what it is, what is the impact that we've seen from other witnesses from around the world, the experience that they have demonstrated, some of which is set out in the green paper, and then also what is it that needs to be addressed, and finally how that has to be addressed.
Yes.
So those are some of the issues that arise. Now, I think your position, as set out in the paper, is that you accept that the concerns about DOFs, if I may just short form it that way, are valid, and you've given some incidents around the world and also that in Singapore and how it might apply in Singapore. Would you agree?
Yes.
And we do also accept that DOFs, I mean, in the nature of how they are purveyed and transmitted, and the purpose of purveying those DOFs in the context of national security issues and so on, tend to play up or play on racial and religious sensitivities. And they in turn then use those to seek to undermine social cohesion. By and large, have I summarized your position correctly?
Yes, by and large.
By and large, right. And you also give the example, or you give the analogy that even in the US, a country like the US has been susceptible to it, not immune to it, despite its, I guess, more mature economy and despite its possibly perceived greater media literacy. Then you ask the question in your submission, I think at page 2, then what more like Singapore, which is a small country? Can you elaborate on that, please?
I think in Singapore, we, in my opinion, we don't have a polity that is critical or that is used to critical thinking or that is used to questioning authority, for example. And I understand from my friends who are teachers, they're trying to, impart these skills to their students at the moment. But by and large, and from my own interaction with people and having been involved in the online world for more than 10 years, I do see that there are instances where people are not questioning enough, not critical enough. So I do feel that, yes, as with previous representatives, there is room, I think lots of room for media literacy and for civic education. But apart from that, I think to go beyond that, there is actually a need to change the tone in society itself, if you ask me, in order to combat deliberate online falsehood, which is a term I also have a problem with, actually. Incidentally, something can be deliberate, it can be false, but it may not be as serious as we think it is. I would prefer the word malicious, actually. Malicious and deliberate online falsehood, because that goes to intent. But coming back to what you've asked, I think...
I was asking you to just give us a bit more background on your comparison between what's happening in America that we see in the experience there, and you say that even they, as a country like them, is not immune to it, let alone Singapore.
I think the comparison is that in the US, they have greater freedom as guaranteed in their constitution. In Singapore, we have also in the constitution free speech, but it has been circumscribed, it has been curtailed in many ways.
So are you using that to then say that Singapore is more susceptible than the US?
I think that is one. Like I said, the other one is, I think, as with other presenters to this committee, we don't have that natural instinct, for want of a better description, to question, to critique, to investigate.
Right.
I think we are more of a deferential society.
Well, that may or may not be because of the laws that you described in your paper. but it's
Yeah.
because, one is a Western country, another one is a very much Asian country, which has its own different social, political, cultural
Yeah, but there are
differences.
Asian countries which are, very critical, and Korea and all that. I mean,
Now, the way you put it, if I just invite you to look at page 2 of your submission, so you compare the US and Singapore at paragraph 2, where you say here on a broader level, as the US 2016 presidential elections experience have shown, even nations as powerful and resourceful as the US are not immune to external parties' attempts to sabotage democratic processes and institutions, let alone a small one like Singapore. So your focus here is, focus in your comparator is really in the nature of the resources and the might of the country between the US and Singapore, correct? That's what you put in your paragraph.
not just resources, I would think. I think it's the nature of the society itself. Yeah.
Nature of the society and the resources available.
I wasn't really referring to resources, actually. I was more trying to compare how the US, the only superpower in the world at the moment.
Some people might disagree.
Yeah, some people might disagree. How, and given its history and its culture of outspokenness and, and all that, it's still susceptible.
Yeah, but that's the point, see, isn't it? I mean, it's outspoken, has a different culture, as you put it. It has been the target of DOS. So why do you automatically assume that a jurisdiction or a climate that is less outspoken, assuming that's correct in the first place, would make it even more susceptible to DOS?
Well, I think because, we've been talking about this the last 1 week or so. The ability to distill, to discern information.
But if I may just postulate this with you, I mean, the ability to distill and discern is one thing. I think that's on the media literacy, education point of view, and I think you've heard what Prof. Tan said about this earlier.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, what is the quality of the US, in the US, which is absent in Singapore, which I will suggest is one key reason why DOFs are pervade in the US in the way it is, riding on social fault lines and religious and cultural issues, is that in the US you're allowed to do a lot more. You're allowed to take a picture of the Quran in a derogatory way and post it. You're allowed to frame yourself as doing something that is maybe even anti-Semitic, and that's okay. But not so in Singapore. So I'm trying to understand why you come from the position that because the US is a more open society, more free, as you put it, that necessarily means that Singapore would be more susceptible to DOFs.
I said that even nations as powerful and resourceful as the US are not immune to external parties' attempts. My point is that actually no nation is immune,
yes,
whether big or small.
Correct. So it's actually really an online global phenomenon that countries have to be concerned about.
Yes.
Right. And I think it's also correct that I think you may have heard from the evidence of previous representatives that this has become one of the weapons in national warfare. It doesn't have to be military, it doesn't have to be kinetic, but it's one of the weapons used by countries to soften a target, to destabilize, and to incite a breach in social cohesion. Would you agree?
Yes.
And I think as a smaller country, particularly for us, which is very open geographically and our economy, would you agree that that's something that we should be particularly concerned about?
I think we should be concerned about any threat to our national security, whether it's online or offline. And I think for Singapore, smallness has its advantages and disadvantages.
Of course.
Right. So when it comes to deliberate online falsehood and campaigns against our nation, I think it is also good to keep in mind that it might be easier for us to react to that, being small. You know, our number of Facebook users, for example, you know, is about 4 million. It's relatively small compared to other countries.
I understand your point.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Loh.